it's Rachel, and recently I've been transitioning to the fall garden, and I wanted to do more of an in-depth video on how I plan that through, because there's actually, I realized, a lot that's going into it, and the first time you try and do this, it can be a little intimidating. If you remember my layout garden video in the spring, I was talking about how I think about the beds. It was all about solar orientation. Our house is to the south of the garden, so unfortunately the only place I could put the garden was on the north side of the house. And so a lot of the sun potentially could be blocked, and I really focused on making sure that these trellises had full sun and that things on the north side of the trellis were the things that could handle some shade. So it was really all about the sun when I was doing the summer stuff. And that makes sense because anything that fruits needs full sun, and it's really, really important. The fall stuff is basically leaves and roots. So I'm going to grow lettuces again, spinach again. I'm growing more beets for their greens. I'm growing carrots. I'm going to grow some Swiss chard, which I'm going to pick at the baby leaf stage, and then more kale, as well as some broccoli. So all of that does not need a ton of sun. So instead, I'm actually thinking about physical protection. So the same insect row cover that I put over the kale now to keep the cabbage moths off, that's kind of like an arched dome. We did a video on it with like PVC that's covered in this insect netting, lightweight row cover. That's also good in the winter and the fall for some thermal protection, as well as right now to keep the cabbage moths off of it. But what that means is that instead of worrying about the sun, I'm actually worrying about height. So I'll put in a schematic here of how I'm laying out each individual bed, but basically I have the little stuff at the edges, and then as this cover goes up and gets taller in the middle, I'm gonna put the taller crops down the center of it. So things like kale and broccoli would be in the middle, things like lettuces and beets are gonna be out at the edges, and then in between is kind of the medium-sized stuff like spinach and Swiss chard. So that's how I'm thinking about it bed by bed. I left the tomatoes, and I'm gonna do that on all 4 beds. I'm leaving like a 6-inch strip where the tomatoes are right now. I'm just gonna plant fall peas at the base of those tomatoes, and you can kind of tell here, I've already done a lot of pruning off of the leaves below sort of 2-3 feet. As they grow and as the fruit ripens and I harvest it off, I just keep cleaning the stems. At this point, like, there's a lot of room on that trellis, and so the peas can grow up, and then that's again a different plant family. They're the legumes, and they will help add nitrogen to the soil. So that's kind of another kind of mini crop rotation I'm doing. So the way I'm thinking about plant families, and I'll kind of show a schematic here, I'll show first what it looked like in the spring and the summer, and I'll color code it by plant family. So you can kind of just see visually how I had this laid out and kind of what the result was. And you can kind of see just from the color coding that there was kind of some concentration of plant families. And then I'll put in a schematic next, which shows the fall and winter garden layout. And you'll see that for the first thing is that there's a much better mix of plant families. So each bed is gonna have a lot more diversity in it. And then second, I'll show kind of this change from spring, summer to fall. And I've intentionally mixed up the plant families to avoid planting the same thing. So in particular, these 2 brassica beds, the one that had spring rapini in it, I actually realized in the course of the spring, so the rapini was not a good performer for me. I got hardly anything off of it. But in the process, I realized I didn't really need that bed for annual crops. Like, we didn't miss it. I didn't feel like I was short of any kind of produce. So I turned it into a perennial bed. And this now has strawberries growing in it. I just planted those a few weeks back, and they're still small. They'll start really spreading and taking over the bed next summer. So for now, there's room in between them, and I'm just gonna go ahead and plant carrots in between the strawberries. They won't be able to go under cover because they're such a tall crop. So at the edges, I'm gonna put some fall carrots and harvest them out. And then by the time it needs winter protection, I'll just leave carrots in the middle only, put a cover over it, and they can overwinter in the soil. So that's the plan for that bed. No brassicas. The kale bed is going to turn over into that same kind of mix of lettuces and beets and stuff like that. But whereas these 2 beds over here, I'm gonna have some radish and some arugula mixed in with the lettuce. Those are both brassica family plants. So I'm not gonna put any of that in the bed that had kale in it. And then in a similar way, down the middle, I'm not gonna grow kale and broccoli in that one because that's brassicas. Instead, I'm gonna grow carrots right down the middle. And so with all of that, we should get a good diversity of plants and crops going through here, and hopefully kind of make up for the fact that I had pretty concentrated plant groupings this spring, which is not what I intended to do. I know that was kind of a lot of information, but I just wanted to walk everybody through that because I realized that there's a lot of just fundamental principles at play here that I had to think through, and I thought it would be good to just kind of try and break that out and just be really clear about all the ways that you have to kind of think about this stuff. So I'm hoping other people are also doing a fall garden. I do highly recommend it. It's a really nice way to extend your growing season, and you can get a different variety of crops. So please let me know what you're planning for your fall garden. I hope you're doing one. And otherwise, I hope that the fall garden plan is helpful and useful. And yeah, happy growing. Hope that you guys are having fun. Thanks.